It is time for lesson number 3, maximizing your potential. And just like with the other examples, I'm going to provide experiments that show this. Now, this is an older one. This study by Rosenthal and Jacobson. It was very simple. They took a class, actual real classes of students, and they told the teachers that it was about a third or a quarter, I forget. Some of your students are bloomers and some are just average. Now, a bloomer is a student who's on the precipice of developing great intellectual growth, and average is average. A year goes by. At the end of the year, the researchers come back and give out IQ tests, and they find, what do you think they found? They found magically that the IQs of the students who were expected to bloom actually bloomed. Their IQs showed these ginormous jumps compared to the control group. And I think this is really, really important for any teachers out there, anybody that wants to be a teacher. Your perceptions of your students aren't just your opinions, right? They impact the way you treat them. They impact that person's success and growth in the future. One of the things that I think is really important as a teacher is like recognizing this study and that, oh, if I believe in my students, that's one necessary component for them to be successful. Now, it has a downside because I do believe in my students, but when my students don't rise to the occasion, it can lead to some frustration because if I believe in you, it suggests that maybe you don't believe in yourself. And so that's going to be the next piece of this. But you got to find people who believe in you. And luckily, you're at this tiny little college where we can get to know each other. And I'll tell you this right here. Your professors at this place believe in you. Now, you've got to really maybe get them to say it every once in a while. But, that requires talking to us in our offices, getting to know us as people. But I'm telling you this, you get to know us as people, we're going to be giving you advice. We're going to be pumping you up, right? I think the most underutilized resource of improving academic performance in terms of these self factors is getting to know your faculty and talking to us about like, oh, I'm worried about my performance on a test. Have you ever gone through test anxiety? Oh yeah. And I had teachers who believed in me that helped bolster me against my own test anxiety. And I just want you to know I believe in you too. And if any of you go on to be teachers, believe in your students, because if you're not, you're holding them back. Now, another way to improve your world is what Carol Dweck, knows in the literature, has incremental and entity theories of intelligence. They're called implicit theories of intelligence. You've probably heard them called growth and fixed mindsets because that's Carol Dweck's best-selling book. And they were originally called helpless and mastery mindsets, which is, if you know that, you know the social psychological handshake for nerds of social psychology. But let me explain to you a study from a couple years ago that really shows the growth mindset aspects and how they develop and so forth. So Carol Dweck's research team from Stanford, found kids I forget exactly where they were from. They might have been from all over the United States. They were definitely from the United States. And they observed parents and kids interacting, just interacting naturally in a day. And what they were specifically focusing on was praise. And they categorized praise in two different ways. Praise was either process praise or person praise. Now let's talk about process praise. Process praise is when, your child does really, really well on something. You're like, oh, I love that you worked hard on that problem. You didn't give up. You persisted. I'm really proud that you solved this difficult challenge by studying or by Googling or whatever they're saying to 1, 2, and 3-year-olds. I don't know if 1, 2, and 3-year-olds Google. I don't have kids, but I'm assuming it starts somewhere at age 3, but maybe not. I'm just kidding. Right, but that's process praise. And then there's person praise, which is probably praise you have given to kids yourselves. And I'm going to tell you about it. It's sort of like the praise you get that says, oh, you're so smart. You're my smarty little wumpkins, my wumpkin pumpkins. So much smarter than the other baby kids. You're the smartest ones. You hear parents say this stuff all the time, and it drives me a little like and I'll tell you why it drives me a little right? Because you got to think about what this is doing to the kid. If you're praising the child for working hard and developing skills, you're teaching them that that's a valuable trait. If you're praising them for being smart, intelligence, an internal state, personality trait that you can't really change, you're going to build in them an idea, a self-concept that they are smart. And that seems like a good idea until you hit fourth grade math, which is when the experimenters looked at these kids again. So I have a simple addition problems up here, but we know in fourth grade, this is when algebra starts kind of coming into play, multiplication tables, like all this really difficult stuff for a young mind to grasp starts happening in fourth grade. And let's say you have developed that growth mindset through process praise. What are you going to be thinking? You're like, oh, this is a difficult challenge, but I've done difficult challenges before. In kindergarten, I learned to tie my shoes and color in the lines. In first grade, I learned to read. They're doing stuff earlier now, so those are my timelines. First grade, I learned to read. In second grade, I learned how to spell, right? In third grade, I learned the times tables. In fourth grade, I'm learning algebra, right? I can do the same thing. I talk to my teachers. I went to the internet. I went to Khan Academy. I can solve this difficult problem. Yeah, I failed my first quiz, but this stuff's hard. I'm going to get it, right? That's what's going on in their mind. Versus, oh, you're smart? Are you? You can't do this problem. You're not smart. You don't get it. You didn't get it on the first try. You're not smart. You didn't get it, Fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And when they actually looked at the grades on these standardized tests, they found that the children who were receiving the process praise were developing the growth mindset and were doing better in school because they weren't taking it personal. Those that have the person praise, which is many of us, our parents did it, my parents did it, a lot of parents did it, told us that we were smart. And then we hit this challenge, and then we're now concerned about being not smart instead of being concerned about how do I do algebra? How do I multiply and so forth? It's just a very interesting lesson about common beliefs about how we'd interact with our own kids. Oh, we're going to build up their self-esteem by telling them they're smart, and how that backfires. What we really need to do is focus people on, if you work hard, you will develop the skills, the cognitive skills necessary to do well. That's developmental psychology, if you think about it, right? You develop little steps along the way until you can do more and more complicated cognitive tasks. Yes. Social psychologically, we've got to let people in on the secret. If you work hard and develop those little steps, and you believe you can work hard and do that hard work, and you believe you can learn anything, you can learn anything. I'm just going to say that. Prove me wrong. Show me by working hard that you working really hard and building this and growing your stuff, developing a true growth mindset and getting rid of that fixed mindset or your focus on your intelligence. Prove to me that it doesn't work. We'll see. It's a challenge. Now, one of the things is it's become fashionable to say you have a growth mindset. So here's sort of my test for you if you actually have a growth mindset. When you fail a test, your first impulse is to study why you failed the test. If failing a test is just, why did I fail it? Rereading the chapter, figuring out, you have to know why you missed a question. Not like you have to get your points. You have to know why you messed up. You have to understand your process. You have to get it right. You have to make a plan for how to not do it again. If that's your response, you have a growth mindset. Here, I walk in your room, I give you a choice, an easy problem and a hard problem. The easy problem, you can show off how smart you are, or the hard problem, you can grow your skills and do something that's really difficult. Which one do you choose? If you choose a hard problem, you've got that growth mindset. If you choose that easy problem, you don't. When I give you a difficult problem, maybe actually in the research we give impossible problems, you won't quit. Then you have a growth mindset. If you will sit at your table and you don't get it, and you're just sitting there, you're stuck on a problem, and you're 3 hours later, you're still trying to get it. Yes, email us, we'll help you out, but also that's showing growth mindset. You're not giving up. This might be myth, but I've heard it multiple times. Einstein famously wore a diaper because his difficult problems were more important than his body. When you receive a bad grade, your first impulse is not to get down on yourself or to get down on your professor. Those are the two most common impulses I see when a student fails a test. And it's like, okay, you can blame me. That's on you. It doesn't do you any good, right? Did Jordan blame the refs when he didn't win those championships? No. What Jordan did was hit the weight room, got bigger, got better, became the best, sorry, LeBron fans, the best basketball player of all time. I'm from Chicago, so just deal with it. The Chicago area. You wouldn't know. I'm from Gary, Indiana, which is basically a suburb of Chicago. But anyways, right? Like, I want you to have that growth mindset. If Jordan didn't have that growth mindset, we wouldn't be talking about him today. Now, this is my lesson to you, and this is a lesson that you're going to have to take because your teachers can't change it, and it just is how it is. Our society has developed an infatuation with grades, numbers, quantification of everything. In part, I love that because I'm a scientist, the quantification bit, but when it's learning and growth, this is not doing you any good. Let me move my video for just a second here. Why do you hate school? Why do I hate school? Grades, grades, and just grades. The over-justification effect and your love of learning. Now, this example is extremely important. This is a study done in the 70s when that was trying to understand the impacts of behaviorism, which is grading everything, rewarding behavior all the time, on love of fun things. Now, the fun thing that they looked at was preschoolers' love of magic markers. Now, I'm showing you the old school magic markers because they were way cooler than the magic markers you had. You probably loved your magic markers, but the ones I had when I was real young, my mom had a couple of these, were like filled with paint. So inside there, it's that felt tip, and it's like this painty stuff coming out, and it's just like liquid color. Compare that to a crayon, that chalky, nasty crayon BS. No good, right? Boom. Magic markers, liquid color. As a like little 4-year-old kid, it's like you're in the zone. You're experiencing flow with your magic markers. You're loving the world. You're loving it, right? All the kids love the magic markers. You brought the magic markers into this preschool that was examined. They loved it. They played with it forever. You had to pull them away from them. They'd start crying. You know how kids are. They developed an experiment. There were 2 groups. Group number 1 said, hey, I got a task for you. I'm not going to tell you what it is. If you do a good job in this next task, I'm going to give you a good player reward. That's what I'm going to do. And the kids were like, okay, let's do it. Give me the task. I want my good player reward, right? They're doing it, right? The other group was said, I have a task for you to complete. And they're kids. And they're like, oh, you're an adult. Okay, I'll do the task, right? Same thing. So they're doing the task, and the task was play with the magic markers. So they played with the magic markers like 10 minutes. And then at the end, like, one group was like, here's your good player reward. You got that good player reward. You were such a good player. Now, they expected it, so it's the expected reward condition. You can see they expected it, so they got it. And the next group, they didn't know there was a good player reward, but they got one too. They were like, here's a good player reward. You're such a good player, and so forth. And then at the end, they were thrown in the room. They're like, oh, I'm the experimenter. Your teacher's going to come back in. Here, you can play with any of these toys in this room. And the magic markers were in the room, right? And they looked at how long the kids played with the magic markers versus the other toys. And you got to understand, the magic markers were the preferred toy of the entire class before the study. They were the preferred toy of every kid in this side of the experiment before the study. Now, after they were told to play with magic markers for a reward, they played with them less. The reward reduced their interest in the thing that they loved, right? Now, those who got the reward but didn't expect it, they played with the magic markers forever. They still loved them. So when the idea here is that when you do something for just a grade, or when you do something for points, or when you do something just because you're going to get rewarded by something else, it kills your love for the thing you're doing. So why do you hate school? Because likely, ever since high school, maybe junior high, you've been taught, oh, like, knowledge is nothing more than a GPA. Knowledge is nothing more than a point. Knowledge is nothing more than a point on an ACT exam, right? Now, knowledge is nothing more than a diploma grade to get you a job, to pay you money. You know, doing a task in life is about money or grades. You're going to hate it. And that's what the research shows. Even for work, right? If you get paid to do something you love, you like your work less. So I think that's really important for you. It's like, okay, you can approach your school in 2 different ways. You can approach it like, you know, the grades matter, or you can start to say, hey, look, these grades are ruining my love and my happiness for this thing that I'm going to try to eventually get flow out of. You're not going to get flow out of it if you're doing it just for the money, right? So keep that in mind. This is, in part, like, it's not much you can do about it. I get that. The grades are there in your life, but you can focus on your perception of the grades. They're not everything, but they will ruin your interest, your love for school, your love for education, your love for learning. Okay, so this is kind of a little bit interesting, but ultimately we've developed this thing called self-affirmation that drastically improves GPAs. So essentially, we can't get by the fact that our parents have told us we were smart. We can't get by the fact that we probably view ourselves as smart. We can't get by the fact that when we fail at a test, it hurts us because we don't think we're smart anymore, right? So in line with that fixed mindset, right, is an intervention that can help people who have developed the fixed mindset to maintain academic performance, and it's called self-affirmation. What you have on the left is a list of values. If you were in the study, I'd say rank these values from least important to most important. Then, as an experimenter, you're randomly assigned to either, the most important value condition or the least important value condition. So that's determined by the experimenter. So if you're in the most important value condition, I'm going to say write this short essay on, your most important value, this time where you were living your most important value, something related to your most important value. The control group, they were asked to write an essay about their least important value, a time when they exhibited their least important value, which people can actually do. Just because it's their least important doesn't mean they've never engaged with it. Now, what they showed in one study that I'm referring to here is they showed a 0.30 average increase in GPA, which you're like, that's not much, but actually it is. So really, if you get a 3.3, you can get into like a PhD program, but it's going to be really hard, require a lot of extra research. But if you get that 3.63, right, you've now met that 3.5 cutoff for grad school. And so like this self-affirmation task, which was only done once during their, here's the point I didn't mention. That self-affirmation task was done once during their freshman year, and the GPAs were measured at the end of their senior year. So doing it once led to a 0.30 increase in GPA. I wonder what doing it every day for, your entire academic career can do to your GPA. But essentially this paper was published in the journal Science, and it showed that this affirmation task drastically improves GPAs 4 years after it was implemented once. I don't know if that'll replicate, but if that does hold, this is a very powerful tool for you to improve your own grades by affirming your own integrity. There are multiple ways to affirm your own integrity. You're a good person. You're a valuable person. Building up that self-esteem through activities, writing it down, describing your values, describing what's important to you. All of that matters. Now, if you are paying attention to the academic world, which you might or might not be, there are a lot of gaps that we're trying to reduce. So social psychologists are trying to reduce racial gaps, economic gaps, gaps in first generation status. These gaps are drastically reduced by belongingness interventions. Now, what do I mean by belongingness intervention? Recognizing and working on the thoughts that you belong in the educational institution that you're in. Now, you belong at Regis, and it's very simple. You went through an application process, and you succeeded. You belong in college. You've earned it. You worked really hard in high school, and you're here. And students forget that. Students forget the 20 years of work that they did to get to this position. And, it's not necessarily your fault, but let's start focusing on that. You earned your position here. You need to recognize that. But also, right, when we notice that, these belongingness interventions reduce these gaps of students that weren't traditionally included in academia, and we're noticing that, we also have to understand that our educational systems do not create strong feelings of belongingness in marginalized groups. And so, that's really important for us to understand. It's important to understand that, one, we belong here, and two, that there's weird social things that are happening in our nation that we're trying to get rid of, I would say, that are making students feel like they don't belong and reducing their GPAs. And in fact, this belongingness intervention reduced the racial GPA gap by 50%. So I just want to focus on that one for a second. If an intervention of belongingness reduces the racial GPA by 50%, it suggests that our colleges aren't doing a good job of making students of color feel like they belong at the institution. And so there's two issues here. We have to recognize that we belong, and we have to lend out our hands to make sure everybody around us feels that they belong. We are each other's soil, and that is very important. So, the end of this lesson, how do you improve your performance? 1, surround yourself with people who believe in you. Tend to your soil. Number 2, develop a growth mindset and a real growth mindset. Don't just say you have it. Okay, you got to believe in your heart of hearts that, you know, you can work hard and do anything, and that if you fail, it's not a personal failure, right? It's not the end of the world, right? What you need to do with a failure is focus on and be just obsessed with improving. Don't be seduced by grades as your dopamine release. Develop a mastery goal. You want to, you know, if you just focus on the grades all the time, you're going to kill your interest in learning. If you kill your interest in learning, how are you going to experience flow and happiness? You can't. Protect your self-integrity with self-affirmation. Fight that imposter syndrome, that act that you don't belong, and tend to others' soil. Again, right? Tend to your own soil. Make sure you have people around you that are supportive, and tend to other people's soil. Make sure everyone feels that they belong. If everyone in this class, just alone, made everyone else in this class feel like they belonged, based on the science, our scores on our tests and our assignments would drastically go up. It's not that difficult to do, to be a good human and to help other people feel that they belong in a place that they belong because we've earned it.